The first gunshot shattered the hospital windows at 4:17 a.m. Maya Brooks was still holding the phone when the glass exploded. She didn't drop it. Didn't scream. 9 years of night shifts had trained her body to absorb shock before her mind could catch up. But nothing in those 9 years had prepared her for what she was watching right now. 30 men in black suits pouring through the emergency entrance like a controlled flood. Cars sitting bumper to bumper across every exit. A patient's heart monitor spiking from the jolt of the blast. Her nursing supervisor pressed flat against the medication cart with both hands over her mouth. And at the center of it all, one man. Tall. Late 40s. A charcoal suit with no tie, top button open, like he had dressed in motion on the way here. His black hair was pushed back from a face that was sharp and completely unreadable. He walked through the debris of the shattered entrance like the glass on the floor didn't exist. His eyes swept the corridor once, clinical, fast, and stopped. On her. Not the attending physician frozen at the end of the hall. Not the security guard currently trying to disappear into the wall behind him. Not the nursing supervisor who outranked Maya by 3 pay grades. Her. Where is my father? Low. Precise. The kind of quiet that fills a room without raising its voice. Nobody moved. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone in her hand, and she thought, with a strange clarity that sometimes comes in moments of pure danger, this is what I get for answering. 40 minutes ago, she had been finishing her 3rd consecutive night shift. Not tired anymore. Past tired. She had crossed into that hollow, fluorescent numbness that sets in around 3 a.m. when your feet ache and your eyes feel like they've been rubbed with sand and you stop feeling like a person and start feeling like a function. She had been charting labs at the station, counting down the last 90 minutes of her shift, when the man in bed 4 called out. Not loudly. Just, "Nurse." She had gone in without thinking. That was reflex after 9 years. He was Korean. 50-something, she guessed. The kind of man whose age was hard to place because he carried himself like someone who had never fully relaxed in his life. Broad-shouldered. A face that had clearly been handsome and was now something more interesting than handsome. He had been admitted 6 hours earlier under the name Han Sung-jin, listed occupation. Business consultant, listed status. Tourist, emergency contacts, none. That last part had nagged at her during intake, but she hadn't been the admitting nurse and it wasn't her chart to question. He had been stable at midnight. Vitals reasonable, pain managed, resting. But when she walked in at 3:52 a.m., something had changed. Not dramatically. Not in any way the monitors were screaming about yet. Just a shift in his color. A quality to his breathing that her body recognized before her brain named it. 8 years of ICU work builds a kind of instinct that has nothing to do with the numbers on a screen. She reached for the call button to page the attending. His hand closed around her wrist. Not aggressive. Deliberate. His fingers wrapped around her arm with the careful precision of a man who knew exactly how much pressure he was applying and had chosen it specifically. She looked at him. He was fully alert. That was the first thing she noticed. His eyes were clear and focused in a way that didn't match someone in cardiac distress. He was afraid, but not of dying. Whatever was in his face was older than that. More specific. "Call my son," he said. His English was careful. Accented but fluent. "Sir, I need to page the doctor first." "No." His grip tightened slightly. "Not the doctor. My son." Before. He stopped. Something moved across his expression. "Before they realize I am here." Before who realized? She should have paged the attending. Every protocol she had ever been trained on said page the doctor, document the change in status, do not engage the patient's personal requests during a potential medical event. She knew that. She had followed that rule hundreds of times. But the way he said "before they realize I am here," the weight underneath those words, the fear that wasn't about his heart, made her pause in a way she couldn't entirely explain. He pressed a phone into her free hand. Not a smartphone. A plain Samsung. Older model. One contact saved in the directory. The name read simply, June. "Welcome to Afro Korean Tales and Stories. The home of Afro Korean love stories where passion crosses cultures and hearts learn new languages. If you're new here, This channel is dedicated to powerful, emotional stories between Black women and Korean men, filled with romance, tension, longing, and moments that stay with you long after the story ends. And to our returning family, welcome back. Your love, comments, and support keep these stories alive. Before the story continues, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale. Now tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what part of this story is already pulling at your heart? Let's connect. Let's feel the story together. Please, Han Sung-jin said. Maya looked at the phone. Looked at him. Made a decision she would spend the next several weeks turning over in her mind, examining from every angle, asking herself if she would make it again. She dialed. The call connected on the second ring. Abioji. The voice on the other end was immediate. Wide awake. The single word carried something in it, relief and urgency tangled together, like someone who had been waiting for this call without knowing exactly when it would come. Maya started to explain. She got 3 words out, "I'm his nurse," before Han Sung-jin's blood pressure dropped off a cliff. What happened next was all hands and training and controlled chaos. The crash cart. The attending arriving in 15 seconds. Compressions. The crash of the defibrillator charging. She set the phone down on the mattress beside him without ending the call because she had no free hands and no spare attention, and the only thing that existed in the next 7 minutes was the work. Han Sung-jin stabilized. Barely. But he stabilized. The attending ordered him transferred to the ICU immediately and told Maya to update the chart and breathe. She picked up the phone. "Hello," she said. The line was dead. She stood at the nurse's station for a moment, just breathing. Then, almost automatically, the way you pull at a loose thread without deciding to, she searched the name on the emergency contact field the attending had finally filled in during the transfer paperwork. Han Jun-woo, 49, heir and current head of Han Group, a conglomerate based in Seoul with holdings in real estate, private logistics, and financial services across 14 countries. Investigated by Korean authorities on 3 separate occasions for alleged ties to organized crime networks operating across East Asia. Never charged. The language in every article was careful. Alleged. Suspected. Sources with knowledge of the investigation. But the photographs told a different story. The photographs showed a man who did not ask for rooms to clear when he entered them. They just did. Maya was still reading when the first gunshot went off and the window at the end of the corridor turned into 1,000 pieces of falling light. Now he was standing 20 feet away from her, and every person in the building had chosen silence, and he was waiting. She set the phone down on the counter. Deliberately. She straightened her posture the way her mother had shown her when she was 11 years old. Shoulders back, chin level, take up your full space, and she looked at Han Jun-woo without looking away. "He's alive," she said. "He's in the ICU. He stabilized 30 minutes ago." Something moved through his face so fast she almost didn't catch it. The ghost of something that might have been relief before discipline locked it back down. "Take me to him." "I'll take you," she said. 2 people. Not 30. The air in the corridor changed temperature. One of his men took a single step forward. Jun-woo raised 2 fingers without turning around. The man stopped. Jun-woo looked at her the way people rarely looked at Maya at work. Not through her, not past her, not with the vague benevolence some people used when they were being patient with staff. He looked at her like she was a variable he hadn't accounted for and was now deciding how to weigh. "You made the call," he said. "He asked me to. You stayed on the line. I was a little busy keeping him alive." A beat of silence. Then, in Korean, short and clipped, he said something to his men. They moved. Not away but back. Outside. Into the parking lot perimeter. He turned back to Maya. "Show me," he said. She came around the nurse's station and walked. She didn't wait to see if he followed. She knew he would. What she didn't know, what she had no possible way of knowing, was that while she had been at the nurse's station searching his name, someone in scrubs she didn't recognize had walked into the ICU with a purpose that had nothing to do with medicine. And that by the time she and Han Jun-woo pushed through those ICU doors, the monitor above bed one would already be screaming a single, unbroken tone. If this story already has you locked in, subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now. And tell me honestly in the comments, would you have made that call? Because Maya did. And nothing after this moment will ever be the same. The flatline tone is nothing like it sounds on television. On television, it's a dramatic note, held long, full of ceremony. In a real ICU at 4:23 in the morning, it is just a sound. Flat and indifferent. A machine stating a fact with no interest in how that fact lands. Maya heard it from the hallway and broke into a run before the thought to run had fully formed. Behind her, Junwoo's footsteps accelerated without a word. The room was already in motion when she pushed through, the night attending at the left side of the bed, a respiratory tech pulling the crash cart, a second nurse starting compressions. Maya moved to the right without being asked, stripped gloves from the wall dispenser in one motion, and stepped in. She called out the time, checked the 4 line, took over compressions when the other nurse's rhythm started breaking down around minute 3. She did not look at Junwoo. She could feel him, standing at the door, not crossing the threshold into the work, which told her something about him, that he understood the geometry of the room, understood there was a boundary here that even he didn't cross. But the weight of him standing there was like barometric pressure. Like the air itself had adjusted. Appa. One word. Barely above a whisper. In Korean it means father, and the way it left his mouth, controlled, but only barely, made the respiratory tech flinch. The team worked for 11 minutes. Maya counted compressions and watched the monitor and answered the attending's questions and did everything that 9 years had built into the architecture of her body. She did not think about what happened after. She did not think about the men outside or the shattered window or the look on Junwoo's face. She thought about rhythm, rate, the specific resistance of a chest under her palms telling her something about what was happening inside it. At minute 11, the attending looked up and called it. The tone continued. Maya stepped back, pulled her gloves off and set them on the cart, stood for 1 second with her hands at her sides and let herself feel the particular weight of a loss before she locked it back into the professional compartment where it had to live. She turned. Junwoo had not moved from the doorway. But he was different now in a way that was hard to articulate. Not broken. Men like this didn't break visibly, she suspected. But something had been removed from his face. Some layer of the careful blankness. What was underneath was rawer. Older. You said he was alive, he said. He was. He was alive and now he is not. Yes. She held his gaze because looking away felt like something she wasn't willing to give him. She watched him absorb it. Watched the grief arrive and get immediately, ruthlessly disciplined into something that could be carried without showing. The attending stepped forward to speak to him. Junwoo looked at the man for approximately 2 seconds, then looked back at Maya. The attending stopped walking. What happened? Junwoo said to her. Not a question. A direction. He came in 6 hours ago with acute chest pain. He stabilized after initial treatment. I found him in distress around 3:50, called for support. We brought him back once. She paused. Then something changed. Something changed, he repeated. His stats dropped faster than they should have for someone who had just stabilized. She said it carefully, because she had been thinking about it during the entire 11 minutes of working on him. The trajectory hadn't been right. Cardiac events had rhythms and patterns she knew intimately, and this one had felt interrupted. Like something had been introduced into the progression. Junwoo's eyes sharpened. You are saying it was not natural. I'm saying it didn't feel like the same event. She watched him process that. Watched the grief get pushed even further back and something colder take its place. Who was in this room, he said, between the time you left and the time we arrived? I don't know yet. Find out. It wasn't a request. But it also wasn't cruel. It was the voice of someone who operated in a world where information was the difference between surviving and not, and who had just decided, in real time, in the middle of his grief, that he needed her on the right side of a line she hadn't been asked about yet. She went to the monitoring station outside the room and pulled the access log. Every entry to an ICU room in this hospital was time-stamped and badged. It took her 40 seconds. One entry during the window. Badge number 7741. She pulled the employee file. Park So-yeon, 24. Junior nurse, 3 months on the floor. Assigned tonight to the cardiac step-down unit 1 floor below. Nowhere near the ICU, no documented reason for the access. Maya stared at the name. She had noticed So-yeon earlier tonight. Noticed her the way you notice someone who is slightly out of place, standing near the station when she had no charts to pull, hovering at the edge of conversations. Maya had filed it as a new employee still finding her footing. She walked back into the room. One of the nurses on my floor accessed this room during that window, she said. She had no reason to be here. Jun-woo looked at her for a moment. Then he took out his own phone and said 4 words in Korean to whoever answered. Within 90 seconds, 2 of his men were inside the building. You said 2 people, Maya said. I said I would take 2. I did not say they would stay outside indefinitely. He looked at her without apology. Where is this nurse now? I don't. Lock the hospital, he said, not to her. You cannot lock a hospital, Maya said, her voice rising for the first time. There are patients in here who need. No one leaves until I know who gave the order. His voice didn't rise to match hers. It went quieter. You found the access log in 40 seconds. You noticed something was wrong before a single monitor confirmed it. He tilted his head slightly. You were the last person my father asked for. You were the last person he trusted in this building. He didn't know me. He just needed a nurse. My father did not trust easily. Not at the end. Something moved across his face. He trusted you. I want to understand why. Somewhere down the hall, a door slammed. One of his men appeared at the ICU entrance and said something rapid in Korean. Jun-woo's jaw tightened. What? Maya said. He looked at her. The nurse. Park So-yeon. He paused. She is gone. Left the building 4 minutes ago through the loading dock. Maya felt the floor shift slightly under her. The loading dock had no badge reader. No camera coverage after midnight. It was a known maintenance gap that administration had been promising to fix for 8 months. So-yeon hadn't just made a mistake in that room. She had known exactly how to disappear after. And on the chart still open on the monitoring station, Maya could now see what she had missed before. A small notation in red ink, added during that 4-minute window, in handwriting that was not Maya's and not the attending's. A single Korean character. She photographed it and showed it to Jun-woo. His face went completely, terrifyingly still. What does it mean? She asked. He looked at her for a long moment. It means this was not about my father, he said. It was a message. To who? To me. He looked back at the character. It means war. Outside the hospital, through the broken window at the end of the hall, Maya could hear new sirens approaching. Not one unit. Several. And underneath that sound, the low rumble of additional vehicles arriving in the parking lot. Not police vehicles. They were already here. These were something else entirely. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories if this part just changed everything you thought you knew. And leave a comment, because at this point, Maya knows something that could get her killed. Would you have kept reading that chart? The police surrounded the hospital at 5:08 a.m. and did not come inside. Maya stood at the window of the family consultation room, the one room on the floor with chairs that didn't belong to a patient, and watched 3 squad cars sit at the outer perimeter with their lights rotating uselessly in the dark. Nobody approached the entrance. Nobody got on a loudspeaker. Nobody knocked. They just waited. They're not coming in, she said. No. Jun-woo sat in one of the chairs, his forearms resting on his knees, his eyes on the floor. He had been sitting that way for 6 minutes. He had not made another call, had not spoken to his men, had not done anything except sit in that chair with the stillness of someone performing a ritual Maya didn't have the context to name. She learned later it was just that. A ritual. In Korean tradition, the eldest son stays close to the body in the hours after death. Guards the spirit. Keeps watch so the person doesn't leave alone. It didn't matter that they were in an American hospital in the middle of a criminal siege. It didn't matter that the police outside were deciding whether the Han name was worth the paperwork. Junwoo had moved his father's body to this room, and he had sat down beside it, and he was not leaving. She sat down across from him. Not to comfort him. She wasn't sure comfort was something he would accept from her, or that she even knew how to offer it in whatever language he needed it in. She sat because leaving felt wrong. Because the old man had grabbed her wrist and said please, and she felt some residual responsibility she couldn't entirely explain or shake. They sat in silence for a while. His name, Junwoo said eventually, without looking up. You saw it in the system. Han Sungjin. Yes. He checked in under his real name. He was quiet for a moment. He was careful his entire life. Careful about everything. Names, locations, movement. He looked up then, directly at her. He used his real name because he wanted to be found. He wanted someone to be able to contact me if, he stopped. If something happened, Maya finished. He knew something was coming. He looked back at the floor. He came to America alone, without informing anyone in the family, and checked himself into a hospital under his real name. That was not carelessness. That was a decision. He was trying to get out from under something, Maya said. Junwoo looked at her sharply. What makes you say that? He said before they realize I am here. Not before you realize. Before they. She held his gaze. Someone specific. Someone he was already afraid of when he checked in. The silence stretched between them. Then Junwoo said, my uncle, Han Min-suk. The name came out carefully, like he was testing the weight of saying it out loud to someone outside his world. His brother, Maya said. His younger brother, currently managing the operational side of the Han Group's less documented activities. He said it without any attempt to soften it. My father had been making changes, quietly, for about 2 years. Moving money, redirecting certain contracts, pulling strings out of places they had been for decades. He paused. My uncle believed he was dismantling something that should not be dismantled. So I don't know yet what he ordered specifically. I know the symbol on that chart is associated with my uncle's inner circle. I know my father didn't come here by accident. He looked at Han Sungjin's face. Something in his own went very quiet. He came here because he was trying to finish something before Min-suk could stop him. Maya thought about the document the attending had flagged during the rushed admission process. A legal directive in the patient file, in Korean, notarized in Seoul 3 weeks ago. She hadn't read it. It wasn't her role to read it. But it had been there. There was a notarized document in his admission file, she said. Filed with his intake forms. Junwoo went still in a different way. What kind of document? I don't know. It was in Korean. Flagged for the administrator to contact the listed attorney in the morning. She paused. I think your father may have been trying to leave something on record. Somewhere outside of Seoul. Outside of your uncle's reach. Junwoo stood up. Not quickly. He unfolded from the chair with a measured deliberateness, and Maya got the sense this was how he moved through every situation, with the kind of pacing that comes from understanding that speed without information is just noise. I need that document, he said. It's in the administrative system. I can't pull legal documents from patient files. Can you access the system? That's not the point. Maya! He said her name for the first time. Not softly, exactly, but differently than the way he'd said everything else. Like he'd made a decision to use it. My father came to this country, used his real name, put that document on file, and then called for you. Not for a lawyer. Not for one of my men. For you. He looked at her steadily. I am trying to understand why he chose you specifically. And I think that document is part of the answer. She wanted to argue. She had 3 good arguments lined up. But the truth was she was already thinking about how to access the administrative portal from the nurse's station, and she suspected he could see that on her face. She stood up. Stay here, she said. She was halfway to the door when it opened from the other side. One of Junwoo's men stepped in. said something sharp and low in Korean. Junwoo's expression shifted. What? Maya said. My uncle's men have arrived. He looked toward the window. They are outside, on the opposite side of the building from the police. How many? Enough. He moved to the window and looked out with his hands clasped behind his back, his posture controlled, his face giving nothing to the glass. My uncle didn't send them to retrieve my father's body. He sent them because of that document. He turned back to her. Which means someone inside this hospital has already told him it exists. Maya thought about So-yeon. Gone through the loading dock. A woman who had known exactly where the blind spots were. She didn't just give him access to your father, Maya said slowly. She's been feeding him information since your father checked in. Yes. Which means your uncle has known about that document for hours. Yes. And he sent men here not to cover up a death, but to retrieve it, Junwoo said. Or destroy it. A burst of gunfire erupted from the east side of the building. Not a warning shot. Multiple rounds. The sound of something starting. Junwoo reached out and grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firmly, moving her back from the window in one motion before she'd processed why. Glass from the consultation room window rained across the chairs where they'd been sitting 30 seconds ago. Maya's heart was somewhere in her throat. Junwoo stepped in front of her. Completely, instinctively, without discussion. She noticed it. She filed it away to examine later when she wasn't standing in a hospital room with glass on the floor and gunfire outside. I need you behind me, he said. I need to get to my patients. In a moment. Right now I need you behind me. She didn't move for a beat. She was a woman who had spent her entire career making independent decisions under pressure, and every part of her resisted being told to stand behind anyone. But she also had eyes. And the look on his face was not about control. It was about the calculation of someone who had just assessed every angle of the room and determined where she was least likely to get shot. She stepped back. The document, she said. If your uncle destroys it, he won't reach it. Junwoo said something into his phone. Then looked at her. Because you are going to access it from the nurse's station right now and send it to a number I give you. Before anyone on either side of this building gets any closer. And if I do that, then whatever my father was trying to protect survives the night. He looked at her with something she hadn't seen from him yet. Something that cost him. Please. The same word his father had used. Maya looked at him for a moment. Really looked. 50 years old, she thought. A man who ran a criminal empire and had clearly never in his adult life said that word to someone he didn't trust. Give me the number, she said. She was 3 steps into the hallway when she heard a voice behind her. Not Junwoo. Not one of his men. Familiar. Young. She turned slowly. Park So-yeon was standing at the end of the corridor. She had come back. And she was not alone. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now, because what So-yeon brought back with her is about to change everything Maya thought she understood about tonight. Drop a comment and tell me, did you trust her from the beginning, or did you know? So-yeon wasn't in handcuffs. That was the first thing Maya's brain registered. Not the man standing behind So-yeon, broad-shouldered, well-dressed, a face that could have been Han Sung-jin's face if you aged it differently and replaced the warmth with something more deliberate. Not the 2 men flanking him. Not the fact that they had somehow gotten inside a building that was supposed to be sealed. The first thing Maya noticed was that So-yeon was standing freely. No fear in her posture. No relief at being rescued. She was standing the way someone stands when they are exactly where they chose to be. That's him, Maya said quietly, without turning around. Your uncle. Yes, Junwoo said from directly behind her. Han Min-suk was 55 and moved like a man who had spent decades being the most dangerous person in every room he entered. He was dressed in a dark suit, the collar perfect, his silver-threaded hair combed with a kind of neatness that felt like a statement. He looked at Maya briefly, a flat, assessing look, the kind you give a piece of furniture you're deciding whether to move, and then he looked past her at Junwoo. Junwoo, he said. His English was more accented than his nephew's. More deliberate. I heard about your father. I came immediately. You sent men to this building an hour ago, Junwoo said. For protection. There was a report of violence. Gunfire from your side of the building 12 minutes ago. Warning shots. To clear a path through. Through what? Through police tape. Through hospital property. Junwoo's voice stayed level. That was what unsettled Maya most about him. He never raised it. The anger, whatever it was, went inward and came back out as precision. You sent men here for the document. Say that. Don't say anything else. Min-suk's expression didn't change. His eyes moved briefly to Maya again. This time they stayed a second longer. Who is she? A nurse. Why is she standing with you? Because I chose to stand here, Maya said. Min-suk looked at her fully for the first time. Whatever calculation he ran on her took about 3 seconds. Then he smiled. Small, controlled, the kind of smile that doesn't come from anything warm. A black American nurse, he said. In his mouth the words were not quite an insult and not quite a description. They were a category. A filing. My brother always had eccentric final choices. Maya felt the comment land in her chest. She didn't move. Didn't change her expression. Her mother had told her once, the people who need to diminish you to feel large are already losing. Act accordingly. Your brother, Junwoo said, used his real name when he checked in. He filed a notarized legal document with this facility. He did all of this alone, without informing anyone in the family, because he knew someone in the family would stop him. He paused. He knew it was you. Min-suk's smile stayed in place, but something behind it shifted. Your father was not well. Not just physically. He had become sentimental, idealistic. He said the word like it was a diagnosis. He wanted to take 60 years of sacrifice and hand it to charity. To regulators. To people who would dismantle everything the family built because it made him feel better in his final years. For the first time, something genuine moved through his expression. Not grief, exactly. Something more complicated. A man who had loved his brother and also believed he had been slowly destroying everything that mattered. I was protecting the family. I have always protected the family. You killed him, Junwoo said. He was already dying. You accelerated it. You sent her. He gestured towards So-yeon without looking at her. You had the medication altered. You used a woman barely 2 years out of nursing school because she was new enough to scare and young enough to need the money. His voice dropped. You did it in an American hospital in the middle of the night so the distance would make it harder to trace. So-yeon made a small sound. Not protest. More like something she'd been swallowing had tried to come up. Maya looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time since she'd appeared in the corridor. And she saw it now. Not the composure of someone standing freely, but the rigid stillness of someone who was terrified and had made a choice they were not finished paying for. So-yeon's hands were pressed flat against her thighs. Her eyes were fixed on the middle distance. She was 24 years old and she was already in a place she didn't know how to get out of. Min-suk's 2 men moved forward slightly. The document, Min-suk said. His tone hadn't changed. My brother was not of sound mind when he created it. Any competent attorney will establish that. But I would prefer not to have it enter any system outside Seoul. He looked at Maya. The nurse can retrieve it. Quietly. This ends without further unpleasantness. If I bring you that document, Maya said, you walk out of here and it disappears. And whatever your brother was trying to protect disappears with it. That is a good summary, yes? No, Maya said. Min-suk blinked. It was the most surprised she had seen him look. I'm sorry. I said no. She kept her voice flat and even. Her heart was doing something loud and unhelpful in her ribcage, but she had long since learned not to let her body's alarm system run her mouth. That document is in a legally filed patient record. It was filed by a patient in my care who is now deceased. I'm not removing it, altering it, or handing it to anyone without a court order. A long silence. Min-suk turned to Junwoo. Control her. She is not mine to control, Junwoo said. Min-suk's eyes moved back to Maya. The smile was completely gone now. "You are a night shift nurse in Atlanta," he said quietly. "You have no idea what you are inserting yourself into." "I know exactly what I'm inserting myself into," Maya said. "A cover-up of a man's death. In my hospital. On my floor." She looked at him steadily. "You're going to have to get that document another way, because I'm not the one who's going to give it to you." What happened next happened fast. Min-suk said one word in Korean. His two men moved toward the nurse's station. Junwoo moved faster, not toward his uncle, toward Maya, putting himself between her and the direction of the men with the physical certainty of someone who had made the calculation before the word was finished. And from the east stairwell, 3 of Junwoo's own men appeared. The corridor became very still in the way that spaces become still when multiple forces have calculated each other's positions and nobody wants to be the one who blinks first. Min-suk looked at his nephew across the charged air between them. "You would do this," he said. "Over a document. Over her." "I would do this over my father," Junwoo said. Min-suk straightened his jacket, composed himself with the practiced ease of a man who had survived many rooms like this one. "Then we will continue this conversation in a more appropriate setting." He turned to So-yeon. "Come." So-yeon didn't move. Min-suk looked at her. She was staring at Maya. Something in So-yeon's face had broken open in the last 2 minutes. Not dramatically, just quietly, like a sealed room that had finally gotten a crack of air. "Come," Min-suk said again. So-yeon looked at Maya and said, in barely more than a whisper, "He told me it would just make him sick." "That it wouldn't." She stopped. Swallowed. "I didn't know he would die." The corridor was absolutely silent. Min-suk's expression went cold in a way that Maya recognized as the moment a powerful man decides someone has just become a problem. So-yeon knew it too. Maya could see it. Min-suk turned and walked toward the stairwell without another word. His 2 men followed. One of them looked back at So-yeon with a look that was not a threat. Exactly. It was a deadline. The stairwell door closed. So-yeon stood in the corridor shaking. Maya looked at Junwoo. He was already looking at her. "She just confessed in front of witnesses," Maya said. "Your uncle knows that." "Yes." "Which means she's not safe." "No." "And he's not going to stop at the document." "No," Junwoo said. "He is going to make sure there is no one left to testify." Somewhere in the building, a fire alarm began to scream. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now, because this story just became something neither Maya nor Junwoo can walk away from. Tell me in the comments, when So-yeon spoke, did you feel sorry for her? Or had she already lost your sympathy? The smoke wasn't from a fire. Maya figured that out in about 45 seconds. No heat, no orange glow down the corridors, no smell of burning material. Someone had triggered a smoke canister in the east stairwell. A distraction. A way to move people. "They're trying to clear the floor," she said. "And create cover for someone to reach the administrative wing," Junwoo said. He was already moving. Maya moved with him. She was not a woman who needed to be told twice about a threat she had already understood. And she understood this one with a clarity that had nothing to do with his world or his family or the politics of a criminal empire she had stumbled into at 3:58 in the morning. She understood it because that document was the last thing Han Sung-jin had been able to do. The last action of a man who had come alone to a foreign country to put something on record before someone took away his ability to do so. She was not going to let it disappear. The administrative wing was 1 floor down and on the opposite side of the building from the smoke. They took the west stairwell. 2 of Junwoo's men followed without being asked. "Tell me about the document," Junwoo said as they moved. "What you remember from the intake flag." "Notarized 3 weeks ago in Seoul. Filed with his admission forms." The flag in the system said to contact the listed attorney in the morning. It had a US-based firm name. Seoul address plus a satellite office in New York. She thought. The document type was listed as a legal declaration. Not a will. Not a medical directive. A declaration. He was making a statement on record, Junwoo said. About what specifically? About what my uncle has done. What the family enterprise has done. He paused at the bottom of the stairwell, looked both ways, moved. 2 years ago, my father started gathering documentation. Financial records. Transaction histories. Names. Enough to dismantle the criminal networks attached to Han Group and hand the information to the right authorities without destroying the legitimate side of the business. His jaw was tight. He never told me. He didn't tell me because he knew I would try to handle it my own way. Would you have? He didn't answer immediately. Yes, he said. Probably. She appreciated that he didn't pretend. The administrative wing was dark. After hours, the department ran on skeleton staff. One overnight administrator at the far desk, currently standing in the doorway of her office looking toward the fire alarm panel with an expression of baffled irritation. Maya crossed to the records terminal before the woman could ask questions. I need to pull a patient file, Maya said. Han Sung-jin, admitted this evening. There's a legal document on file that needs to be secured. I can't authorize file access at. The patient is deceased, Maya said. There is an active security situation in this building. The document in his file is the reason for that situation. She looked at the administrator steadily. I need you to let me access it and transmit it to a verified external attorney of record before someone with no legal right to it gets there first. The administrator stared at her, then looked at Jun-woo, then at the 2 men behind him. Lord have mercy, she said quietly, and sat down at her terminal. It took 4 minutes to locate the file, verify the attorney contact embedded in the intake form, and initiate a secure transfer to the New York office. A confirmation receipt came back in 90 seconds. Automatic, time-stamped, logged in 2 systems simultaneously. The document existed now in a place Min-suk could not reach without due process. Maya looked at the confirmation number on the screen. It's done, she said. Jun-woo stood beside her looking at the screen. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said very low, He chose the right person. He chose the nurse on call, Maya said. He didn't choose me specifically. He chose the person who would do this, Jun-woo said. That is specific enough. She didn't answer. Because she was tired and she was running on adrenaline, and something about the way he said it made her feel a weight she wasn't ready to examine. They walked back toward the main floor. The fire alarm had stopped. The smoke had cleared. The corridor was quiet in the way it gets after something violent has passed through. Not peaceful, just exhausted. And then Jun-woo's phone rang. He answered. Listened for approximately 10 seconds. His face did not change in any way Maya could name, but his posture shifted. A minute tightening across his shoulders. The kind of change that meant the information was bad, and he was already deciding how to respond to it. He ended the call. What? She said. So-yeon, he said. We left her on the floor. Maya's stomach dropped. She knew before he said it. My uncle's men didn't leave the building, Jun-woo said. They cleared the floor to come back for her. She is gone. Gone as in, taken. He was already moving toward the elevator. She confessed in that corridor. My uncle heard every word. He pressed the button and turned to look at Maya. She is 24 years old and she is the only living witness to what happened in that ICU room, and my uncle has her. Maya stood very still. So-yeon had been stupid and frightened, and she had made a terrible choice for reasons that were not entirely her own. She had also, in one unguarded moment, done the only brave thing she might ever get credit for. She had said I didn't know he would die in front of witnesses when she could have walked out and said nothing. She deserved better than what was happening to her right now. I want to go after her, Maya said. Jun-woo looked at her. I know what you are going to say, she continued. I know it's not safe, and I know it's not my world, and I know every logical reason why I should let your men handle it. She looked at him directly. And I know that the second I walk away from this building tonight, my name is already attached to your father's death. My nursing license is flagged, and the Atlanta police are going to have questions I cannot answer without explaining everything that happened in this hospital. She paused. So I don't actually have a clean exit anymore. Do I? He was quiet for a moment. No, he said. You don't. Then tell me where he would take her. Junwoo studied her face for several long seconds. Long enough that she could see him making a genuine assessment, not of whether she was capable, but of whether telling her was the right call. He was not a man who made decisions carelessly. She already knew that. He was a man who had been running a complicated empire since his 20s and had survived doing it, which meant he weighed things before he moved them. "I know where," he said. "But we are not walking into it without a plan." "Then let's make one." The elevator opened. Standing inside, it was Han Min-suk. Alone. No men behind him. Just him, in his perfect suit with his composed face, holding a phone in one hand, looking at Maya and his nephew with an expression that said he had expected exactly this. "I came to speak with Junwoo," he said pleasantly. "Alone?" "No," Maya said. Min-suk looked at her with that flat, categorizing look again. "You are very comfortable saying no to people who can end your career," he said. "Your nursing license, your employment record, a very interesting documented statement from the Atlanta PD that your prints are on the medication chart of a deceased Korean national." He paused. "I wonder how comfortable you would be saying no if you understood what I could put in motion before sunrise." The elevator hummed. Maya looked at Min-suk, at the phone in his hand, at the deliberate way he had come here alone, no guards, no weapons visible, because he understood that the real pressure was not physical. And she understood something. He was scared. Not of Junwoo. Not of her. Of that document. A man with his uncle's power doesn't come to an elevator alone at 5 in the morning unless something has rattled him enough to make him move personally. He had sent the document to the attorney. He had let Min-suk see the confirmation screen through the administrative wing's window. She hadn't noticed anyone watching, but she'd also been focused on the terminal. He knew it was done. He was here because he was recalculating. Which meant he didn't have as much as he was pretending to have. "Put whatever you want in motion," Maya said. "I was doing my job. Everything I did tonight I would do again, and I can document every second of it." She held his gaze. "Can you say the same?" The elevator doors began to close. Min-suk put his hand out and stopped them. "Junwoo," he said. "Not to Maya now. Just to his nephew." Something shifted in his voice. The performance dropped an inch. Underneath it was something almost human. "Walk away from this. From her. From your father's crusade. Take what the family has built and keep it standing. That is what an eldest son does." Junwoo was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped forward and pressed the door open button, holding it, looking at his uncle. "Where is the girl?" he said. Min-suk straightened. The inch of humanity closed back over. "I don't know what you mean," he said. "Yes, you do." Junwoo looked at him with an expression Maya was starting to recognize, the one that meant he already knew the answer and was waiting to see if the other person was going to tell the truth. "She is 24 years old and she made a mistake because you put her in a position to make it. She is not a loose end. She is a person. She is a liability." "She is a person," Junwoo said again. "Tell your men to release her. Now. And then we will discuss, only discuss, what comes next. Not because you can threaten me into it. Because she does not deserve what is happening to her right now." Min-suk looked between them. The elevator hummed. Then Min-suk's phone rang. He looked at the screen. And for the first time since he had walked into this building, something crossed his face that was not performance and not control. It was alarm. He answered. Listened for 4 seconds. "That's not possible," he said in Korean. Then he looked up at Junwoo with an expression that Maya could not entirely read, but that Junwoo clearly could, because his posture changed immediately. Not fear. Something sharper. Alert. "What?" Junwoo said. Min-suk lowered the phone slowly. "The New York attorney," he said. "She did not just receive the document." He looked at Maya with something she was not prepared for, almost like respect, the grudging kind, the kind that costs a man something to show. She was already expecting it. She had been expecting it for 3 weeks. He paused. "My brother did not send one copy. The attorney has been holding a second set of records, account records, transaction histories, names, in escrow since last month. Timed for release to 3 separate regulatory bodies in 3 countries at 6 a.m. if she did not receive a check-in call from him by that time. The silence in the elevator was absolute. "It's 5:47, Maya said. Min-suk looked at the phone in his hand. 13 minutes. Nothing he did in this building, to any person in this building, would stop what Han Sung-jin had already set in motion 3 weeks ago from a notary's office in Seoul. He had not come to America to be saved. He had come to make sure the final piece reached the right hands. And he had chosen a tired night shift nurse from Atlanta to be the person who delivered it. Not because she was powerful. Because she was exactly what she appeared to be. A woman who would do her job, who would answer a scared man's phone call, who would say no to a crime boss in her own hospital corridor without calculating the cost first. She was the one person Min-suk would never have thought to neutralize. That had been the plan. Jun-woo looked at Maya. She could see the moment it settled over him. The full understanding of what his father had done. Not just what he was leaving behind. What he had built. A man who had spent decades building an empire had spent his last months building an exit, and he had calculated every detail, including who would be standing in the right place at the right time. Including her. He knew, Jun-woo said quietly. He had already done it. Before he ever got on a plane, Maya said. Min-suk stepped out of the elevator. He walked down the corridor without looking back. Not running. Not rushed. A man who had just watched 60 years of carefully held power begin to unwind, walking the way people walk when there is nothing left to do but accept the weight of what's coming. His men, somewhere in the building, must have been notified. Because within 3 minutes, they were gone. The parking lot, when Maya looked out the window, was clearing. Jun-woo stood beside her at the glass. The city was doing what it did every morning, shifting from dark to that specific shade of pre-dawn gray, the streetlights going pale against a sky that hadn't decided yet what color it was going to be. What happens now? Maya asked. She wasn't asking about the regulatory filings or the legal cascade or what it meant for Han Group and its empire. She meant to him. What happens to a man whose father just handed him the end of everything he was raised to protect, and also the beginning of something his father apparently believed in enough to die for? Now, Jun-woo said, I have to decide if I am going to finish what he started. Are you? He looked at her. I don't know yet, he said. Which she was already learning was his version of honesty. Not promises, not performance. Just the truth as it actually stood. So-yeon, she said. My men are already moving. He looked at his phone. She will be found. Maya nodded. She looked at the city getting lighter and thought about her mother, who had died in this building 3 months ago in a room down the hall from where Han Sung-jin had just died, and who had told her once that the worst thing you can do with the life you're given is spend it being careful. Careful gets you to the end, her mother had said. But it doesn't get you anywhere worth going. Maya had a missed call from the nursing board on her phone, logged at 4:55 a.m. She had a voicemail from the hospital administrator. She had a career that was currently a question mark and an involvement in something that was going to be on international news by the time the sun fully rose. She also had, on the other side of her, a man who had just chosen to let his father's last act stand, even though it meant the end of the world he'd spent his life inside. They were both standing in the wreckage of something, and neither of them had a clean road forward. But the sky was getting lighter. I need coffee, Maya said. Jun-woo looked at her for a moment. Something in his expression shifted. Not a smile, exactly. Something quieter than a smile. Something that lives behind where smiles come from. There is a place 2 blocks from here, he said. Open at 6. You know Atlanta coffee shops? My father had a meeting here last week. He always researched the area. He paused. He was thorough. He really was, Maya said. They stood there another moment. Then she turned from the window. There was So-yeon to find. There were statements to give. There was a career to either save or rebuild. There was a man beside her who was going to spend the next year of his life dismantling the only world he had ever known, and who had asked her, not in words, not yet, but in every choice he had made in the last 2 hours, to not disappear before he figured out how. She didn't know what any of it meant yet. She just knew she wasn't walking away from it. Some decisions don't feel like decisions. They just feel like the only honest thing left to do. If the story has carried you this far, subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories. Because this story is just getting started. And I need to know, in the comments, did you see Han Sung-jin's plan coming? Or did it hit you the same way it hit Min-suk? She was found in a parking garage 4 blocks from the hospital. So-yeon was sitting on the concrete floor against a support pillar with her knees pulled to her chest and her arms wrapped around them, rocking slightly. Not injured. Not restrained. Just left. Like something Min-suk had picked up and put down again when it stopped being useful. That was almost worse. Junwoo's man called it in at 6:12 a.m. Maya was in the back of a black SUV when the call came through, and she was moving before Junwoo had finished translating it. She's alone, Maya said. Yes. He just left her there. He no longer needs her. Junwoo's voice was even. The regulatory filings are already in motion. My uncle is currently on the phone with 3 attorneys in Seoul. She is not his priority anymore. She's 24 years old and she's sitting on a parking garage floor alone in the dark, Maya said. She's somebody's priority. He looked at her for a moment. Said nothing. But he told the driver to move faster. So-yeon didn't look up when Maya crouched in front of her. She was shaking in the specific way that happens after adrenaline leaves a body that has been running on fear for hours. Not violent, just continuous. Like a frequency. Hey, Maya said. Quietly. Look at me. So-yeon looked up. Her eyes were red. Her face was pale in the gray morning light in the way that certain kinds of Korean skin go when color drains out of it. Almost translucent. She looked younger than 24. She looked like a child who had been asked to do something an adult should never have asked a child to do. He said no one would die. So-yeon whispered. I know. He said it would just delay things. Slow things down. He said the old man was all ready. She stopped. He said I would be paid and it would be done and no one would be hurt. People who use other people always say that, Maya said. It's how they get people to say yes. So-yeon looked at her. Something in her face broke open a little further. You're not angry at me, she said. Like it was a thing she couldn't account for. I didn't say that, Maya said honestly. But angry doesn't help you right now. And it doesn't help him. She paused. Are you willing to tell the police what you told us? So-yeon's eyes moved to Junwoo, standing 10 feet back with his hands in his pockets, watching. Then back to Maya. He will. She stopped. Min-suk is not going to be in a position to do anything to you by the time this day is over, Maya said. Not because of anything dramatic. Because his brother spent 2 years making sure of it. She held the girl's gaze. But I need you to be brave enough to say what you know. Not for Junwoo. Not for me. Because a man is dead and the truth is the only thing he's owed at this point. A long silence in the concrete dark. So-yeon pressed her lips together. Nodded. They got her into the vehicle. The drive back to the hospital was quiet. So-yeon sat with a bottle of water Maya had taken from the center console and stared out the window. Junwoo sat on Maya's left. The space between them was the specific kind of tense that isn't about conflict. More like 2 people who have been through something together and haven't yet decided what to do with that fact. He was looking at his phone. Reading something in Korean. Scrolling fast. She watched the side of his face, the focused stillness of a man processing multiple threads simultaneously, and thought about his father sitting in that hospital bed choosing his moment. Choosing his people. Choosing her. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. Did you know about any of it? The 2 years of documentation, the attorney, the plan. He was quiet for a moment. No, he said. My father told me nothing. He set the phone down. I have been running the Han Group's operations since I was 31. My father remained chairman, but he stepped back from daily management. I thought, he paused. I thought he was tired. That he was preparing to rest. He was preparing, Maya said. Just not to rest. He didn't trust me with it. There was something raw in that. Not accusation. He wasn't blaming his father. Just a man sitting with the specific hurt of being excluded from the most important thing someone he loved ever did. Maybe he trusted you too much, Maya said. Maybe he knew you well enough to know you would have tried to handle it your way. And his way needed to work exactly as he'd planned it. Junwoo looked at her. That is a generous interpretation. It's the honest one, she said. You're not someone who lets other people carry things. He needed to carry this one himself. He turned back to the window. He should have told me, he said quietly. Yes, she agreed. He should have. And he didn't, and that's going to take time to sit with. She paused. But he also finished it. That counts for something. The SUV pulled back into the hospital lot. The police had moved from the outer perimeter to inside. 2 detectives Maya hadn't seen before were waiting in the lobby, and her hospital administrator was standing beside them with the expression of a woman who had aged 10 years since midnight. Detective Lena Graves was a broad-shouldered black woman in her 40s who looked at the scene in front of her. The nurse's station still half demolished, the glass still on the ICU floor, a Korean crime boss standing in her city's hospital lobby at sunrise, with the particular exhaustion of someone who had seen most things and wasn't surprised but was genuinely tired. She looked at Maya first. You're the nurse, she said. Yes. You've been here all night. Yes. And you're still here. I work here, Maya said. Something almost like a smile crossed Graves' face. Almost. She introduced her partner, a quiet Korean-American man named Detective Park Sung-ho, who looked at Junwoo with the measured caution of someone who knew exactly who he was looking at and had already decided to be professional about it. The next 2 hours were statements. Careful, detailed, chronologically ordered. Maya told everything: the wrong number, the conversation, the access log, So-Yun's entry, the document transfer, Min-suk in the elevator. She told it the way she charted, factually, precisely, without editorializing. Junwoo sat across the table from a different detective and told his version. She could see him through the glass partition. His posture was open, controlled, but not defensive. He had made a calculation, she could tell, that transparency here was the correct move. That the regulatory filings meant the criminal investigation was already coming whether he cooperated or not, and that cooperating gave him something he needed. Credibility. He was building it in real time. So-Yun's statement took 40 minutes and ended with her putting her face in her hands and crying in a way that was completely different from performance. Detective Graves handed her a tissue and didn't say anything, which Maya noted as a specific kind of skill. By 9 a.m. the hospital had something like order restored. By 9:15, Maya was sitting in a break room with a cup of coffee that was genuinely terrible and didn't care. She had been awake for 27 hours. Her feet were past hurting. She had given a formal statement, spoken to her nursing supervisor, been told to take leave pending the hospital's internal review, and been handed a card by Detective Graves that said to call if she thought of anything else. She thought of plenty. She just needed 10 minutes first. The break room door opened. Junwoo came in, looked around the institutional space. Plastic chairs, a vending machine with one stuck selection, a coffee maker that had clearly been purchased in a different decade, and sat down across from her without comment. She pushed the spare cup toward him. He looked at it. It's bad, she said. He picked it up and drank anyway. They sat in the terrible quiet for a moment. The filings went out at 6 a.m., he said. 3 regulatory bodies. Seoul, Tokyo, and the U.S. Treasury. What happens now? Investigations. Audits. My uncle's people will start negotiating within the week. He looked at the cup. The legitimate side of Han Group will survive if it's managed correctly. The rest, he paused. The rest ends. Is that what you want? He looked up. It's what my father wanted. That's not what I asked. He was quiet. I don't know what I want yet, he said. I have wanted certain things for 20 years, and now those things are different. The shape of what comes next. I can't see it clearly. He looked at her. That is not something I admit easily. I know, she said. How do you know? Because you're a man who plans. And right now you don't have a plan. And it's written all over you. He looked at her for a long moment. My father's funeral will be in Seoul, he said. In 3 days. There are rights. Family obligations. The Han name still carries expectations even when the empire underneath it is being dismantled. He paused. I would like you to come. Maya set her coffee down. To Seoul. Yes. Junwoo. I know what I am asking. My nursing license is under review. I have a leave of absence that starts today. My name is attached to an international criminal investigation. She looked at him. And you want me to fly to Seoul for a funeral? Yes. Why? Because my father asked for you, he said. And because... He stopped. The pause was long enough to be deliberate. Because I find that I don't want to do what comes next without someone who has no reason to tell me what I want to hear. The break room was quiet. Outside the door, the hospital was getting back to its morning business. Shift change, rounds, the ordinary machinery of a place that takes in damaged people and tries to send them back out repaired. Maya thought about her mother's empty apartment 3 miles away, still uncleared. About the nursing board voicemail she hadn't listened to yet. About her next shift, which was now a question mark. About everything that constituted her life in this city, real and present and hers. She thought about a tired old man grabbing her wrist in the dark. Please. I'll need to go home first, she said. Pack a bag. Call my cousin. Something in Junwoo's face shifted. Not relief, exactly. More like a man who had made a careful argument and found, to his genuine surprise, that it had worked. Of course, he said. Maya drank her terrible coffee. And then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No name. Just an address in Atlanta's west side and 4 words. Come alone. Don't tell him. She stared at the screen. Then she looked up at Junwoo, who was looking at his own phone and hadn't seen hers. Someone else was in this city. Someone who knew she was here. Someone who knew about him. And whoever they were, they didn't want him to know they'd made contact. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now because that text just changed everything. Who sent it? Drop your theory in the comments, because Maya has a decision to make before they board that plane. She went alone. She knew she shouldn't. She had about 45 minutes of internal argument with herself in the back of the cab. Every sensible voice she owned lining up to explain exactly why a woman with her name currently attached to a federal filing and an international investigation should not respond to an anonymous text by going to an unknown address on Atlanta's west side by herself. She went anyway. The address was a dry cleaning business on a commercial strip, the kind of place that has been in the same family for 30 years, faded decal on the window, fluorescent lights visible through the glass. It looked ordinary. It looked closed, even though the sign said open. Maya stood on the sidewalk for a moment and looked at it. Then she went in. The woman behind the counter was Korean. 70, maybe older, the kind of age that sits differently on Korean women, both visible and somehow beside the point. Small, white-haired, dressed in a plain gray cardigan. She looked at Maya with the direct, undecorated attention of someone who had been waiting. You are the nurse, the woman said. Yes. Sit down. Maya sat. The woman came around the counter and took the chair across from her. She moved slowly but not weakly. There was nothing frail about her except her size. My name is Han Bok-soon, she said. I am Junwoo's grandmother. Maya went very still. You're here, Maya said. In Atlanta. I arrived last night. Before the events. She folded her hands in her lap. I came because my son told me he was going to do something that would end badly, and I wanted to be nearby when it did. I have been sitting in a hotel 4 blocks from that hospital since midnight. Does Junwoo know you're here? No. Her eyes were steady. Dark. The kind of eyes that have watched a great deal and given away very little of what they made of it. I will tell him. When it is time. But I wanted to speak with you first. Why? Because you are the variable he didn't plan for. She said it without judgment. Like a fact. My son planned very carefully. He accounted for Min-suk. He accounted for the attorneys and the filings and the timing. He did not, could not, account for what would happen between my grandson and the woman who answered his phone. Maya looked at her. Nothing has happened between. Not yet, the grandmother said simply. But something is happening. I am 81 years old. I have watched people fall toward each other my entire life. I know what it looks like from the outside. She tilted her head slightly. He asked you to come to Seoul. How do you know that? Because he is his father's son. And his father spent 60 years making careful decisions and then making one impulsive one at the end that changed everything. She paused. He asked you because he is frightened. Not of what comes next for the company or the family name. Frightened of doing the hard thing alone. That's human, Maya said. Yes, the grandmother said. It is. And it is also dangerous. For you specifically. Maya folded her hands on the table. Say what you're saying, she said. The old woman looked at her for a moment, and Maya had the distinct impression of being genuinely seen. Not assessed. Not calculated. Seen. My grandson is a good man inside a complicated inheritance, she said. He has done things in service of that inheritance that a good man should not do. He is now trying to become something different. That process is not clean. It is not safe. And the people who are losing power because of it, my son's filings named names. Those names have associates. Those associates do not care about regulatory bodies or legal proceedings. She looked at Maya directly. If you go to Seoul, you go as a target. Not because you matter to the investigation. Because you matter to him. And the people who want to hurt him will calculate accordingly. The dry cleaning shop was very quiet. Are you telling me not to go? Maya asked. I am telling you what going means. She unfolded her hands. There is a difference. She paused. I am also telling you something else. My grandson has been surrounded his entire life by people who wanted something from him. His position. His family's money. His protection. Even the people who loved him, they loved the version of him that was useful to them. She looked at Maya steadily. You told a man with 30 armed people outside to send them away. You refused his uncle's threats. You secured a document because it was the right thing to do, not because anyone would reward you for it. A pause. My son was right to choose you. Maya felt something move through her chest. Not quite pride. More like being handed something heavy and understanding it was an honor. He didn't know me, she said again. He knew enough, the grandmother said. He was a careful man. Careful enough to pick up on a quality in someone in the middle of a medical crisis. She stood slowly, smoothing her cardigan. I wanted to meet you before Seoul. I wanted to see for myself. And, Maya said. The old woman looked at her for one long moment. Come to the funeral, she said. Come with your eyes open. Come knowing what it costs. She moved back toward the counter. And when you get there, there is a woman on my grandson's staff named Mrs. Yoon. Find her. She will help you navigate what you don't understand. And there will be much you don't understand. Maya stood. Why didn't you want Jun-woo to know you contacted me? Because I needed to know if you would make decisions independently of him. She looked back. You came alone. That tells me something important. What does it tell you? That you are not already lost in him, she said. That you are still thinking for yourself. She turned fully back to the counter. That will matter. More than you know. Maya stood in the dry cleaning shop for a moment after the old woman's back was turned, absorbing the specific weight of a conversation that had just rearranged several things she thought she understood. Then she walked out into the Atlanta morning. She had a plane to catch in 12 hours. She had a bag to pack. A cousin to call. A nursing board voicemail she had to stop avoiding. A career that might or might not be waiting for her when she got back. She stood on the sidewalk and called Jun-woo. I'll be ready by 7, she said when he answered. All right, he said. Your grandmother is in Atlanta. A long pause. Where? He said. She gave him the address. Another pause. Shorter, the kind that means someone is recalculating and doesn't want you to see the calculation. She contacted you, he said. Yes. Before me. Yes. She could hear him breathing. Controlled. Contained. What did she say? He asked. She said come with your eyes open, Maya said. So that's what I'm doing. She ended the call and stood there in the sunlight. Her phone had 4 unread messages, 2 missed calls, and a nursing board voicemail she absolutely needed to handle. She handled all of it. And when she got home and opened her closet to pack, she stood in front of it for a full minute, the particular wardrobe of a woman who lived between hospital shifts and not much else, and felt the specific gap between the life she had been living and the one she was apparently about to step into. She packed like herself. Not like someone performing anything. Dark slacks, good shoes, her mother's silver earrings. The things that were hers. At the bottom of her bag, she put the photo she kept on her nightstand. Her and her mother, outside this hospital, the year Maya got her license. Her mother's hand on her shoulder. Both of them squinting into the sun. She zipped the bag. Then her front door shook. Not a knock. An impact. Like someone had hit it with something. She was still for a second. Then it happened again. Maya set the bag down and looked at the door. She had a chain, a deadbolt, a standard lock. She had the phone in her hand. Who's there? She called. Silence. Then, muffled through the door, a voice said something in Korean. Short. Urgent. She didn't understand the words. But she understood the tone. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now because whoever is on the other side of that door, this story just followed Maya home. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have opened it? She did not open the door. She stepped back from it, phone already dialing, and put the sofa between herself and the entrance the way her cousin Marcus had taught her when she was 19 and he was 23 and trying to explain basic home safety to a woman he loved who he thought was too trusting. Distance buys time, he'd said. Time buys options. The voice on the other side spoke again. Korean. Different rhythm this time. Less urgent, more controlled. Like someone recalibrating their approach. Maya had Junwoo dialing before the second sentence finished. He picked up on the first ring. Someone's at my door, she said. Speaking Korean. They knocked hard enough to shake it. She heard him move. The sound of a chair, footsteps, a brief exchange with someone nearby. Don't open it, he said. I'm not an idiot. I know. Don't open it anyway. More movement on his end. Can you see anything through the peephole? She moved carefully to the side of the door, not directly behind it, not in the direct line of anything that might come through it, and angled to look through the peephole. A man. Korean. Mid-40s. Dark jacket. He was standing back from the door with his hands visible, which she noted. Not pressed against it. Not reaching for anything. Standing at a distance that was almost deliberately non-threatening. He knew about peepholes. He was performing non-threat. That told her he was trained. One man, she said quietly. Mid-40s. Hands visible. He's standing back. Junwoo was quiet for 2 seconds. What is he wearing? He said. Dark jacket. No tie. She paused. He has a pin on his lapel. Small. Red. Silence. Don't open the door, Junwoo said. I'm 12 minutes away. Do not open it. What's the pin? It's a family association marker. Old guard. Men who served my grandfather. His voice was careful in a way she was learning to parse. That particular carefulness that meant the information was more complicated than a simple answer could carry. They are not Minsuk's people. Then whose people are they? My grandmother's, he said. The man knocked again. Properly this time. 3 even knocks. She sent him, Maya said. She sends people she trusts to situations before she arrives herself, Junwoo said. He is almost certainly there to tell you something she didn't say in the dry cleaning shop. A pause. Or to give you something. You could have led with that, Maya said. I said almost certainly. She looked through the peephole again. The man had not moved. He was waiting with the patience of someone accustomed to waiting. She made a decision. She kept the chain on, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door to the chain's width. I'm listening, she said. The man looked at her. His expression was neutral but not unkind. He reached into his jacket, slowly, watching her face, making the movement visible and deliberate, and produced a sealed envelope. White. Her name written on it in English in handwriting she didn't recognize. He held it out. She took it. He bowed, a short, respectful inclination, and walked away down the corridor without another word. She closed and deadbolted the door. The envelope was sealed with wax. A Han family seal pressed into it. She recognized the mark from a photograph she'd seen in one of the news articles the night before. She sat on the sofa and opened it. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Korean on the left side of each page, English on the right. A parallel translation, the English slightly more formal than spoken language, the kind that comes from someone who learned it carefully rather than colloquially. It was from Han Sang-jin. Dated 3 weeks ago. She read it twice. Then she sat very still for a long time. Junwoo arrived 9 minutes later. She let him in. He looked at her face and didn't say anything, just sat down across from her with his elbows on his knees and waited. She handed him the letter. He read it. She watched his face as he read, watched the controlled stillness fracture in small ways. A tightening around his eyes. A barely perceptible shift in his jaw. The slight parting of his lips at something on the second page. He set it down. He wrote to you, Junwoo said. His voice was steady. The steadiness cost him something. He didn't know me, Maya said, for the 3rd time in 12 hours. But this time it sounded different even to her. He watched you work for 3 hours before he called you to his bedside, Junwoo said. He requested you specifically for his overnight care. The charge nurse assigned you because you were available, but the request originated with him. He looked at her. I pulled the admission notes this morning. She hadn't known that. She turned it over. A man who had checked himself in under his real name, carefully, deliberately, had also carefully, deliberately, requested the nurse he wanted watching over him that night. He had been selecting for something. Not her specifically, but for whatever quality she had that he recognized. And then he had written her a letter. The letter said several things. It said he was sorry for what his choice had cost her in terms of safety and professional complication. It said he had faith that the woman who treated a dying stranger with dignity at 4 in the morning would know what to do when the time came. It said, and this was the part she had read 3 times and still sat with something uncomfortable, that he hoped she would not be afraid of his son. Junwoo is not what he appears from the outside, the letter said. He is what he appears from close. The distance distorts. Give him the chance to be seen clearly. She looked at Junwoo. He wanted me to trust you, she said. Apparently. That's a lot to put on a stranger. Yes. He was quiet. My father made large requests of people he believed were large enough to handle them. Something moved across his face. He was usually right. She stood up, folded the letter back into the envelope. I'm packed, she said. We should go, he said. They were at her door when her phone rang. Not a call, a video request. From an Atlanta PD number. She answered. Detective Graves appeared on the screen, in what looked like a parked car, her expression tight. Ms. Brooks, Graves said. I need to tell you something before you leave the country. Maya went still. How do you know I'm leaving? Because I've been doing this job for 18 years and I ran the passenger manifest this morning. Graves looked directly into the camera. Han Min-suk posted bail 2 hours ago. His attorneys argued flight risk was low given the nature of a regulatory investigation versus criminal charges. The DA is still building the case. She paused. He's out. The apartment was very quiet. He posted bail, Maya said, for ordering a man's death. The criminal charge is still being assembled. Right now he walked on the regulatory question, and the existing warrant was insufficient to hold him on capital charges without the full case file. Graves' voice was controlled, but something in it was tight. I want you to know because you're a material witness and you're getting on a plane with his nephew. I'll be in Seoul, Maya said. So will he, Graves said. As of 90 minutes ago. Maya looked at Junwoo. He had heard. She could see it in the set of his jaw. "Thank you, Detective," Maya said. She ended the call. The room was very still. Minsuk was already in the air. He wasn't running from the investigation. He was going home. Going to Seoul. Going to the funeral of the brother he had killed, because in Korean culture, in the Han family specifically, appearing at the funeral was not optional. It was required. Absence would be its own statement, its own shame. He would be there, at the same funeral, in the same room, and he would have had 12 hours on a plane to decide what the next move looked like. "Still want me to come?" Maya said. Junwoo looked at her for a moment. "More than before," he said quietly. She picked up her bag. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now, because they're both walking into the same room as the man who killed his father. And Maya is walking in as a target. Tell me in the comments, would you still get on that plane? The Han family estate outside Seoul was not what Maya had expected. She had built a picture from news photographs and the particular imagination that fills gaps with assumption. Something imposing, iron-gated, designed to communicate power the way wealthy people sometimes use architecture as a warning. The reality was older than that. Quieter. Stone walls that had weathered a century of Korean seasons. A courtyard with a single persimmon tree that had clearly been there longer than anyone alive. Traditional tile-roofed buildings connected by covered walkways, the kind of layout that predated the empire, that had existed before any of this was complicated, back when the Han name was just a family name and not a thing that required attorneys. Maya stood in the entrance courtyard with her single bag and felt the full weight of cultural distance settle over her. Not hostile, just real. Like arriving somewhere that had its own complete language and understanding that you only spoke pieces of it. The flight had been 14 hours. Junwoo had spent most of it on calls and documents. She had slept for 4 of them, read for 3, and spent the remaining hours thinking. Mrs. Yoon met her at the entrance. She was exactly what the grandmother had described, a woman in her late 60s with the contained energy of someone who had been managing difficult situations for so long that calm had become her default setting. She looked at Maya with the direct appraisal of a woman who did not have time for pretense. "Your room is prepared," she said. "Thank you. Shoes here." She indicated a wooden rack near the entrance. "The household bows to Mr. Han when he enters. You don't have to bow, but be aware of the moment and step aside." "Understood." Mrs. Yoon looked at her for a second longer. "You're not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know," she said. Which Maya suspected was honest. "Come. I'll show you the main rooms and then leave you to rest. The rites begin tomorrow morning." The next 12 hours were a study in watching grief operate inside a structure. The Han household moved with a specific choreography of Korean mourning rituals. Incense, specific order of family, the preparation of food that carried meaning Maya didn't yet know how to read. Mrs. Yoon explained what she could, in the efficient language of someone translating not just words but context. "The eldest son pours first," she said quietly during the evening rites. "Everyone else follows in age order." Junwoo stood at the altar with his back straight, and his face arranged into a composure that Maya now recognized as something he wore over grief rather than instead of it. He poured soju into a cup for his father's spirit. Said words she couldn't follow. Bowed 3 times. Deep, sustained bows that were not performative. The kind that cost something. She stood near the back beside Mrs. Yoon. The other family members present ranged from elderly aunts and uncles to cousins in their 20s. They looked at Maya with varying gradations of the same expression. Not quite hostility, more like the specific confusion of people encountering something they had no existing category for. A Black American woman standing in their mourning space. Nobody said anything directly, which Maya had learned was its own kind of communication. After the evening rites, she found herself in a garden corridor with a cup of tea Mrs. Yoon had pressed into her hands without comment. The night air was cold and clean. The persimmon tree in the courtyard was lit from below by a single light. Junwoo appeared beside her. He had changed out of the formal morning clothes into something simpler. He looked, she thought, like a man who was exhausted down to a level that sleep couldn't reach. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Fine," he said. You keep saying that. It keeps not being true. He looked at the tree. This estate has been in the family for 120 years. My great-great-grandfather built the first building. He paused. My father used to sit in this garden when he wanted to think. He said the tree had been here longer than any of the family's complications and would be here long after they were resolved. He was quiet a moment. I used to think that was a sentimental thing to say. And now, she said. Now I think he was right. He looked at her. Are you comfortable? The household. The household is doing what people do when something unexpected shows up, she said. Figuring out how to place it. She shrugged. I've been unexpected my whole life. I know how to stand in a room. He was quiet. Maya, he said. The way he said it, like the name required care. Don't apologize, she said. I came with open eyes. Remember. He looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, he said. Not for the dramatic things. Not for the document or the confrontations or the plane. For something smaller. For being here. For standing in his family's garden and not pretending it was simple. She nodded. And then the garden light caught something at the far wall, a movement in the shadows. Brief. Gone before she was certain. But Junwoo had gone very still beside her. Go inside, he said quietly. Not loudly. Not urgently. With the specific controlled quiet that she now associated with immediate danger. What is? Now, he said. She moved toward the door. A sound like air displaced. Fast. Something struck the stone wall 6 inches from her shoulder. Maya dropped without thinking, knees and palms on the garden stones, years of code blue instinct making her small before her brain had processed the sound. Junwoo was already moving, not toward her, not away, but toward the wall, toward the shadow that was no longer still. She heard voices, rapid Korean, feet on stone. Then silence. Then Junwoo crouching beside her. Inside, he said. His voice was the same controlled quiet. But his hand on her arm shook. Just slightly. Just once. The stone wall where the impact had landed showed the mark clearly in the garden light. A throwing blade. Traditional. The kind that certain old guard families use to send messages rather than to kill. Close enough to mean we can reach you without closing the distance entirely. But they had been aiming for her. Not for him. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now because someone just told Maya exactly what she's worth to the people who want Junwoo to fail. Drop a comment. Was this Min-suk, or is there someone else we haven't met yet? The blade had not been meant to kill her. That was what Junwoo's security lead determined in the 20 minutes after the incident, speaking in rapid Korean while Maya sat in a chair inside the estate's main room with Mrs. Yoon standing next to her and a cup of hot barley tea in her hands that she was not drinking. The trajectory was wrong for a kill shot. Too high. Too close to the wall. It was a placement, specific, deliberate, designed to land exactly where it landed. 6 inches from her shoulder. Close enough to feel. Not close enough to connect. A message. She had already figured that out herself. Who? She said, when Junwoo came back inside. We don't have confirmation yet. Best guess. He sat across from her and looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen from him before, something that was close to apology but more complicated. The face of a man who had brought someone into his world and was now watching the consequences arrive in real time. There are several factions within the network my father's filings targeted, he said. Min-suk is the most visible. But the people he worked with, financial partners, operational associates, they have their own interests. Their own responses to the filings. He paused. Some of them will focus on the legal exposure. Others send blades into garden walls, she said. Yes. To tell you to send me home. To tell me you are a vulnerability. His jaw was tight. To demonstrate that they can reach you before I can stop them. He looked at her steadily. Which is true. In this specific context, this estate, this city, they know the geography better than my security does. They have relationships here I cannot fully map. She set the tea down. You should have told me this before I got on the plane, she said. Yes. That's it? Just yes. I calculated that you would come anyway, and I wanted you here, and I told myself the risk was manageable. He said it with the flatness of someone who had already convicted himself of the thing he was confessing. That was a selfish calculation, and it was wrong. She looked at him. You're right, she said. It was. Silence. She let it sit there. She didn't soften it. What I can offer, he said, is increased security, a different room assignment closer to the protected wing of the estate, and my full attention to getting you out of Seoul within 48 hours if you want to leave. He paused. What I cannot offer is a guarantee that I was right to ask you to come. I know, she said. But I'm here now. She looked at the garden door. What does the message mean in terms of their actual power? The blade, is that display or capability? He looked at her for a moment, and she saw it, the slight recalibration in his eyes, the shift from guilt management to something more functional. Display, he said. They could have escalated. They chose not to. That means they want leverage, not a crisis. A dead American woman on Han estate grounds during a state funeral creates international complications no one wants. So they want you to send me away, she said. Which weakens your position publicly and signals that external pressure can move you. Yes. So leaving is actually the worse option. A pause. Strategically, he said carefully. Yes. Personally, that calculation is different. It's the same calculation, she said. Because if you send me away to protect me and it signals weakness and they escalate the pressure on you, then I'm not actually safer. I'm just not watching. He looked at her for a long moment. You think clearly under pressure, he said. 9 years of ICU nursing, she said. You learn to read a situation while your hands are busy. Mrs. Yoon, who had been standing near the wall with the patience of someone who had heard many difficult conversations and understood when to be furniture, made a small sound that might have been approval. They made adjustments. Security repositioned. Maya's room changed. The funeral schedule reviewed for exposure points. The funeral itself was the following morning. Maya had not been prepared for the scale of it. The Han family name, even in the process of being dismantled, commanded attendance. Business associates, former government contacts, family networks that stretched back generations. The estate filled with people in white, Korean mourning white, which was different from Western mourning black in a way Maya found herself thinking about. White for transition. White for the passage between one state and another. She wore navy, which Mrs. Yoon had quietly suggested as the right note for her specific position. Respectful, present, not overstepping into a role she hadn't been assigned. She stood near the back during the formal rites. Min-suk arrived 40 minutes into the service. He came with 2 attorneys and a posture that was precisely calibrated, grief-appropriate, dignified, the performance of a man attending his brother's funeral with a heavy heart rather than the knowledge of what he had arranged. He moved through the crowd with handshakes and brief, bowed exchanges that looked, from a distance, like nothing except mourning. He saw Maya. Their eyes met across 20 feet of morning white and incense smoke. He looked at her for 3 full seconds. Then he looked at Jun-woo. Then back at her. And he smiled. The same small, controlled smile from the hospital elevator. The one that had nothing warm in it. Then he turned away and spoke to someone beside him. Maya breathed. She found Jun-woo's gaze across the room. He had watched the exchange. She could tell by the set of his shoulders. He gave her a slight nod. She was not sure what it communicated exactly, only that it was deliberate and meant specifically for her. She nodded back. The service continued. After, outside in the estate's formal garden, the family moved into smaller conversations and the atmosphere shifted from ceremony into the more complicated space of family grief, which in any culture involves old resentments surfacing alongside real sadness, the proximity of people who wouldn't choose each other except for blood, the forced intimacy of shared loss. An elderly uncle approached Maya. He spoke to her in Korean. She looked at him steadily and said, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Korean. My name is Maya Brooks. I was Han Sung-jin's nurse." He repeated himself, in Korean, louder. Mrs. Yoon appeared at her elbow with the soundless efficiency that Maya was coming to appreciate as one of her primary qualities. "He says you don't belong here," Mrs. Yoon translated. Without inflection, Maya looked at the uncle. "Tell him I was asked to be here by the man whose funeral this is," she said. "Tell him I'm honoring that." Mrs. Yoon translated. The uncle stared at Maya, then at Mrs. Yoon, then said something else. "He says the Han family does not need outside observers at their grief." Maya kept her face composed, her spine long, her mother's voice in her head. "Take up your full space. Tell him," she said evenly, "that I understand his discomfort, and that I'll be here anyway." Mrs. Yoon looked at her for just a fraction of a second. Then she translated. The uncle walked away. Mrs. Yoon made the small sound again, the one that might have been approval. Across the garden, Jun-woo was watching. He had heard, or seen enough of it to know. He excused himself from the conversation he was in and crossed to her. He said nothing to her directly. He simply stood beside her. Present. A declaration made through proximity rather than words. In a culture where who stands beside you and who doesn't is its own language. Several pairs of eyes adjusted. Not all of them were hostile. Some of them were simply recalculating. Then Min-suk appeared at the garden entrance. He was holding something. A document. He walked toward Jun-woo with the unhurried pace of a man who had spent the night preparing something. "Nephew," he said pleasantly, "I have something for you to read." He held the papers out. "It is a preliminary injunction, filed this morning in Seoul courts, with co-signatories from 7 board members of Han Group." He paused. "It challenges your right to unilaterally authorize the regulatory filings on grounds that you acted without board consensus and in personal interest." He looked at Maya. "It also formally names an external individual as having unduly influenced company leadership decisions." He was naming her. In a Korean court filing. On the day of his brother's funeral. Jun-woo took the papers. "Read the first page." His face showed nothing. "Your attorneys filed this today," he said. "My attorneys protect the family's interests." "This is your brother's funeral," Jun-woo said. "Yes," Min-suk said. "And this is what he left behind." He looked at the papers in Jun-woo's hands. "I loved my brother. I am also realistic about what happens to this family without proper management of what he set in motion." He looked at Maya one final time. "Send her home. Drop the filings. Take control of the board before it fractures." He almost sounded reasonable. That is how a Han man protects his family. The garden was very quiet. Jun-woo looked at the papers. Then he looked at Maya. She could see him making the calculation, not of what was right or what he wanted, but of what this moment required. What it would cost in every direction. She said nothing. This was not her decision to make. He looked back at Min-suk. "No," he said. Min-suk straightened his jacket. "Then the board moves forward without you," he said. Jun-woo handed the papers to the attorney standing beside him. "Let them try," he said. Min-suk looked at him for one long moment. Something in his face, under the performance, under the decades of discipline, looked almost like grief. The genuine kind. The kind that lives alongside everything else. Then he turned and walked away. And from somewhere inside the estate, raised voices. Running feet. One of Jun-woo's men appeared at the garden entrance with an expression that broke through every layer of professional composure. He said something. Jun-woo went absolutely still. "What?" Maya said. "The grandmother," he said. He was already moving. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now, because whatever just happened inside that estate is about to change everything again. Tell me in the comments, do you think Min-suk feels anything real? Or is it all calculation? Han Bok-soon was not dying. She was sitting upright in a chair in the estate's inner room, dressed in morning white, with a single cup of tea in front of her that had gone cold. She was alive and conscious and looking at her grandson with the expression of a woman who had planned to be found exactly this way. She had collapsed in the formal garden 20 minutes earlier. or appeared to collapse. The doctor who had reached her in under 4 minutes, present at the estate for the funeral, part of the family's standing arrangements, had assessed her and found elevated blood pressure and what he was calling a stress response in a woman of her age and the day's events. Rest. Fluids. Quiet. She had waited for the doctor to leave the room. Then she had sat up, accepted the tea that Mrs. Yoon offered, and said, "Bring Jun-woo." And the nurse. Maya stood in the doorway of the room and processed this information, the staged collapse, the clear eyes, the cooled tea, and felt a specific kind of respect that she was not sure the old woman deserved and was giving her anyway. "You did that on purpose," Jun-woo said. "I made myself available to be found," his grandmother said. "That is different. You manipulated the funeral's proceedings." "I stopped my grandson from doing something irreversible in a garden with 40 witnesses," she said. Her voice was steady, not defensive. "You were about to escalate with Min-suk in a way that would have been recorded by every person present and used against you in the board proceedings." She looked at him. "I gave you an exit." He was quiet. She was right and he knew it. Maya could see it in the specific quality of his stillness, the kind that comes from a man who is standing inside a correct argument that he didn't ask for. "Sit down," the grandmother said. To both of them. They sat. She looked at Maya first. "The injunction he filed," she said. "I heard," Maya said. "It will not hold. My son's filings were established through external channels that predated any board consensus requirement. The legal basis is weak." She paused. "But Min-suk's goal is not to win the injunction. His goal is delay. Every week of legal proceedings is a week for the board factions to realign. A week for nervous partners to move money. A week for the story to become complicated enough that regulators slow down." She looked at Jun-woo. "He is not fighting the outcome anymore. He is fighting the timeline." "I know," Jun-woo said. "Then you also know that the next 6 weeks are not about confrontation. They are about patience." She folded her hands. "Which is not something you do well. I do it adequately. You do it when you have no choice." She looked at him steadily. "You have a choice now. I am asking you to make it consciously." She paused. "Your father's plan is in motion. It works without you fighting every surface battle. Let the attorneys work. Let the regulators work. Focus on what only you can do, which is hold the legitimate side of Han Group together so that when this is over, there is something worth keeping." He was quiet. "And her," he said. He meant Maya. His grandmother looked at Maya. "That is for her to decide," she said. "Not you." Maya looked at the old woman. Then at the room, the estate's inner sanctum, the oldest part of the building, walls that had held generations of difficult conversations. "The weight of it." "The injunction names me," Maya said. "Yes," the grandmother said. "Which means you have a legal interest in what happens next." She paused. "It also means you cannot disappear cleanly even if you want to. You are in the record now." "Your son put me in the record," Maya said. "Yes," the grandmother said. Simply. "He did." She looked at her without apology. "He made a calculation about you. He was right. But the cost of being right about someone is that they now have to carry what being right has made them." Maya sat with that. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to her in the past 48 hours. "I want to be clear about something," Maya said. She looked at Jun-woo. Then back at the grandmother. "I'm not here because I was maneuvered into it. Not by your son's letter, not by your meeting in Atlanta, not by any of the things that have happened." She paused. "I'm here because I looked at all of it, all the cost and the complication and the danger, and I decided to stay anyway. That's my decision." She looked at the grandmother. "I need you to know that I know the difference." Han Bok-soon looked at her for a long moment. Then she bowed. Not the small social bow. A deep bow, forward, held. The kind Jun-woo had given her before and which Maya now understood meant something specific. The weight of full respect, offered freely, by a woman who did not give it easily. Maya was very still. Jun-woo, beside her, went equally still. When the grandmother straightened, Her face was composed, but her eyes were wet. "My son chose well," she said quietly. The room was very quiet. Then Mrs. Yoon appeared in the doorway with the expression that meant something required attention. "The board," she said to Junwoo. "3 members have requested an emergency session. Tonight." "Where?" "The Han Group offices downtown." "They are." She paused. "Min-suk is already there." Junwoo stood. "With how many of the 7? 5, Mrs. Yoon said. 5 out of 7. Enough for a quorum if the bylaws allowed it. Enough to take an action before the full regulatory proceedings locked the board down. What can they do tonight?" Maya said. "Remove me as acting head," Junwoo said. "Temporarily, pending the injunction. Install an interim chair." He looked at Mrs. Yoon. "Min-suk." The word landed like a stone. "Can they do that?" Maya said. With 5 votes and the right procedural argument, yes. He was already calculating. She could see it. The question is whether the 2 remaining board members can be reached before the session starts. "How long do we have?" Mrs. Yoon looked at her watch. 90 minutes, she said. Junwoo looked at his grandmother. "Rest," he said. Which was instruction and also, barely, tenderness. She waved him toward the door with one hand. He looked at Maya. She was already standing. "Tell me about the 2 board members," she said as they moved toward the door. "What do they need to hear?" "One is a legitimate businessman who joined the board 8 years ago. He joined because my father invited him personally, and he respected my father. He moved fast down the corridor. If he understands that honoring my father's wishes means holding the vote tonight, he will hold it." "And the other?" A pause. "The other is my aunt," he said. "My father's younger sister. She has not spoken to me in 4 years over a financial dispute that was my fault." He didn't look at her when he said it. "She will not take my call. But she might take a call from someone who has no history with her," Maya said. He looked at her. "You don't speak Korean." "Mrs. Yoon does," Maya said. From behind them, Mrs. Yoon's footsteps accelerated. They moved through the estate into the night. And in Maya's pocket, her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Graves in Atlanta. "Min-suk's bail has been revoked. U.S. warrant issued on the capital charge. The DA moved faster than expected. Interpol notification filed 20 minutes ago." She stopped walking. "Read it again." Then she looked up. "Junwoo," she said. He stopped. Turned. She held up the phone. He read it. For one moment, just one, his face did something she hadn't seen it do before. The layers came down. The discipline, the calculation, the controlled grief and controlled anger and controlled everything. For one moment he looked like what he was. A man who had spent 3 days carrying an enormous weight and had just been told that part of it had shifted. He looked at her. "It's not over," she said. "The board still." "I know," he said. But he kept looking at her. And she understood that the look was not about the board or the warrant or any of the strategic machinery churning around them. It was simpler than that. And more complicated. "Can love survive this?" she thought. And then, is that even the right question? Maybe the right question was whether 2 people who had been forged in the same fire could find each other afterward and recognize what they'd both become. She didn't answer the question. Not yet. 90 minutes, she said. He took a breath. They moved. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories right now because the warrant is just the beginning of what's about to break open. Tell me in the comments, do you think Maya is falling for him? Or is she something stronger than that? 1 year later. Atlanta. The ribbon was yellow, not the standard ceremonial red, but yellow, because that had been her mother's color, and because the hospital administrator had asked Maya what she wanted, and for once in her life she had answered honestly. The new wing was called the Brookshan Community Health Center. Maya stood in front of it in the Georgia morning with a pair of ceremonial scissors in her hand and a crowd of people behind her. Hospital staff, community members, a scattering of journalists, the city councilwoman who had championed the funding application, 2 of her mother's friends from church who were crying already and hadn't waited for the appropriate moment. Junwoo stood beside her. No security visible. No black suits. No perimeter vehicles. Just a man in a dark coat with his hands in his pockets, squinting slightly in the kind of clear winter light that Atlanta produces on its good days. He was not dressed like a chairman. He was dressed like someone who had recently learned that he preferred to be less visible. The Han Group's legitimate operations had survived the year, barely, and not without cost. 4 board members had resigned. 2 had stayed, including the businessman who had received a 3 a.m. phone call from Mrs. Yoon and understood what was being asked of him. Junwoo's aunt had attended the board meeting 90 minutes after they'd called her. She had not spoken to him directly. She had voted correctly. Some reconciliations begin as transactions and become something else later. Min-suk had been extradited 8 months ago. The trial was ongoing in Seoul. He attended every session in a suit that was still perfectly pressed, and his attorneys were still very good, and it was going to take time. But the documentation his brother had assembled over 2 years was thorough in the specific way that meticulous people are thorough, the kind that holds under cross-examination. So-yeon had testified. She was 25 now. She had lost her nursing license and was working at a community health clinic in Busan under a supervised arrangement negotiated partly through channels Maya had no visibility into and had chosen not to ask about. She had sent Maya a letter 6 months ago. 3 paragraphs. The last line said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understood, finally, what I did." Maya had written back. Mrs. Yoon was in the crowd. She had flown in from Seoul specifically for this, which she announced by arriving and immediately assessing the catering setup with professional concern. Han Bok-soon had wanted to come, and her health had prevented it. She had sent a letter instead, handwritten, 3 pages in Korean with English on the facing side, which Maya had read 4 times. The last line read, "My son saw a woman worth crossing an ocean for. Now I understand why." She had cried for 10 minutes. Then she had gotten herself together. Detective Graves was standing near the back of the crowd in civilian clothes, off-duty, hands in her jacket pockets. She caught Maya's eye and gave a slight nod. Maya nodded back. The nursing board had reinstated her license 6 months ago following the completion of the investigation, a formal finding that her actions on the night of Han Sung-jin's death had been consistent with nursing standards and that the external circumstances did not constitute professional misconduct. The letter had been 6 paragraphs of institutional language that added up to, "You did your job." She had framed it, not out of vanity, because her mother would have wanted her to. The administrator said some words into the microphone. Then the councilwoman. Then Maya. She kept it short. She talked about her mother, who had been a patient in this building and deserved better resources than had been available to her. She talked about the communities this wing would serve. She did not talk about the year that had just passed or the events that had made this funding possible. Some stories don't need to be told at ribbon cuttings. Some stories just need to be lived. She cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. Junwoo, beside her, made no sound. But she felt him shift slightly, the micro-movement of a person who is trying not to show that something has landed in them. She glanced at him. He was looking at the building. His face arranged into the composed neutrality she had learned to read, the look he wore over things that mattered too much to display publicly. She bumped his shoulder with hers. Small. Deliberate. He looked at her. Something behind his eyes that was not the composed neutrality. Something quieter. Something that had been growing in the margins of the past year, in 2 a.m. phone calls between continents, in the particular shorthand of 2 people who had been through enough together that they'd stopped needing to explain everything from the beginning, in the silences that had stopped feeling like distance and started feeling like something else. She hadn't named it. Neither had he. Not directly. But some things don't require naming to be real. A reporter pushed forward. Microphone out. "Ms. Brooks, are you and Mr. Han a couple?" The question landed in the small space between them. Maya looked at the reporter. Then at Junwoo. He looked back at her with an expression that said, genuinely, without performance, "That is entirely up to you." She looked at the reporter. "We're both here," she said. "That's the answer." The reporter looked unsatisfied. The crowd shifted around them. Maya's cousin Marcus found her elbow and steered her toward the reception table because he had decided his job today was to keep her fed and hydrated, a role he had assigned himself without being asked and which she appreciated deeply. She got a cup of coffee that was significantly better than the hospital break room variety. She stood in the Georgia morning light watching people mill through the entrance of a building that had not existed a year ago, that existed now because a dying man had grabbed her wrist in the dark and said please, and because she had answered. She thought about the wrong number that had started all of it. She thought about what it meant that a wrong number could redirect an entire life. Hers, his, So Yun's, the families and institutions and legal proceedings that had radiated outward from one misdial at 3:58 in the morning. She thought about her mother, who had told her that careful gets you to the end but doesn't get you anywhere worth going. She thought she was somewhere worth going. Junwoo appeared beside her. He had a cup of coffee too. He had figured out the coffee station faster than she would have predicted. The Foundation board meeting is Tuesday, he said. I know. The Seoul office is requesting your input on the hospital partnership framework before then. I sent notes yesterday. They want more. They always want more. She looked at him. Is that why you came over here? Foundation business. He was quiet for a second. No, he said. Then why? He looked at her with the expression that wasn't the composed neutrality. The quieter one. Because you were standing here, he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked out at the crowd and the building and the yellow ribbon on the ground. Stay for the reception, she said. I was going to, he said. Good. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hand went still. She felt Junwoo go still beside her, the instant awareness of someone trained to read shifts in the people near them. She looked at the screen. Unknown. No country code. The number format was unfamiliar. She looked at him. His eyes had gone to the careful, assessing place. Probably nothing, she said. She answered. A voice. Low. Accented in a way she couldn't immediately place. Not Korean, not American, something else. Speaking English with the precision of someone for whom it was a third or fourth language. Miss Brooks, the voice said. My name is not important yet. What is important is that Han Min-suk did not act alone. The people who funded him, the financial architecture behind the Han Group's illegal network, they were not named in your father-in-law's filings. A pause. They have been watching the Foundation. They have been watching you both. Another pause. They want you to know they have been patient. And that patience is ending. The line went dead. Around her, the crowd celebrated. Children ran across the new hospital lawn. The ribbon lay yellow on the ground. Atlanta went about its Saturday morning. Maya stood very still. She turned to Junwoo. He had heard enough of her side, the stillness, the shift in her breathing, to know. How many? He asked quietly. He didn't say. He looked out across the crowd. Scanning. Always scanning. She watched him do it, the habit so deep it operated without his awareness, the instinct of a man who had been living at the edge of danger his entire adult life and had spent the last year trying to step back from it. He looked back at her. Together, he asked. She thought about a wrong number in the dark. About what it cost to answer. About everything that answering had made possible and complicated and real. She thought about the photograph at the bottom of her packed bag a year ago, her and her mother, squinting into the sun. The weight of it. The reason she had packed it. She took a breath. Together, she said. Around them, the city hummed. The building stood. The ribbon lay on the ground. The past doesn't die easily. Sometimes it waits. And sometimes, it comes back funded. If this story moved you, shook you, or made you feel something real, subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories. This has been a journey, and I need to hear from you in the comments. From the beginning to this end, what moment changed everything for you? Because for me, it was always the wrong number. Thank you for watching Afro Korean Tales and Stories. If this story stayed with you, there are more waiting here. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories for a love that crosses cultures and lingers. Tell us in the comments, what emotion are you leaving this story with?